Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you back to the second part of the third day of Typo Day 2017. Well, to begin the proceedings, I would like to introduce to you another special individual who will be addressing this gathering with our second vision address for the day. It's none other than Mr. Peter de Almeida, Managing Director and the Chief Executive of Enable Private Limited, Sri Lanka. Mr. Peter de Almeida, as I said, is the Managing Director and the Chief Executive of Enable Private Limited, a technology company he founded in 2008. Over the 9 years, it has grown almost tenfold in both revenue and in number of people working in it. Before Enable, Peter was the CEO of Millennium ESP during a career spanning 25 years in the IT industry, both overseas and in Sri Lanka. Before his involvement with the IT industry, Peter was a banker, having served as the treasurer of the Ceylon Bank Employees Union. Peter is also known to many as a performing artist, as a director and actor. He has taken part in a number of stage plays, television dramas, and movies. And he has turned his oratorical skills to motivational speaking, engaging young people and entrepreneurs across Sri Lanka on questions of creativity, people, power, and sustainability, all of which are core values in his business. He is also a design enthusiast with a keen eye for functional design and sets very high standards for visual quality in all that he does. To chair the session, I cordially invite Professor Sri Kumar, Faculty Industrial Design Center and Indian Institute of Technology, India.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your first session after lunch, and I'm a little surprised that I'm so far away. It looks very funny and very uncomfortable. It's going to be a tough act to keep you engaged, but I will try. Now, you might ask yourself, listening to the introduction, what the hell am I doing at a typography forum? I'm running business, we are growing our numbers, all that is well and good, but dude, what are you doing here? So that's what I want to address. And it all starts with this challenge that we are facing with creativity. Now, in 2010, IBM did a very interesting survey of executives, and they asked them all over the world, 3,000 global execs were interviewed, and they asked them, as you face this uncertain future, what is this one thing that keeps you occupied, or what is that one attribute that you're looking for that will help you face the competition better? And strangely, it was not technology or any of that, but it was just creativity. They said, we are struggling to find people who are creative. 2 years later, I think they repeated that, and then this time people said innovation. So we'll talk about that a little bit, about creativity and innovation, but that is still the problem today, finding people who are creative in business. And why is this so important? That's what gets me thinking. I mean, some years ago when we started our lives in school and all that, creativity was never seen as an important element of business or life itself. In fact, it was a very small group of people who were involved in creative arts, and they were largely looked down upon. But today, why is creativity such an important topic of discussion? I think there are two things, especially from the point of view of business, and then we can talk about society later. From the point of view of business, what's happening is technology changes are so dramatic that they are impacting businesses, actually disrupting businesses in a way that businesses could never have dreamt of. And the example that I can think of, a striking example, is banking. Because we see in Sri Lanka, and I'll come a little later to the Sri Lankan scenario, I saw the papers recently, about a few days ago. I opened on the first page, all the banks in Sri Lanka are making super profits. Massive growth, billions of rupees. But yet, they provide such a poor experience to their users that I'm surprised that they are still in business. But they won't be for long. That's for sure. Take this Alibaba. All of you have heard of Alibaba, or most of you must have heard of Alibaba. I mean, they're completely disrupting the entire payment system in China. They hold 80% of all mobile payments. And you might think, oh, mobile payments is a small part of the whole payment story. No. Mobile payments are taking $22 billion out of the banking system. And Alibaba has found a way, a creative way of using technology and a fine interface, a simple platform to completely disrupt this hundreds of year old industry. And look at what they have done in India. In India, there's a company called Paytm. It started surprisingly as a value-added company that was allowing you to do prepaid recharging. That's what they were. Today, who are the folks from India here? Professor, you are there. Quite a number of. You all have heard of Paytm. Paytm, right? Alibaba has invested 40% stake in this company. And today, Paytm, January 2014, they started the mobile wallet platform. In December, they'd gone to 20 million users. By July 2015, 100 million users. They will take share from the Indian banks. And there's a big story. They're not just going to stop at taking payments. They're going to use analytics. They're going to do credit rating. They're going to sell their rating to agencies for advertising and marketing. And this is going to be a huge change in the banking landscape in India. It will happen in Sri Lanka. But complacency is what is, stopping people from getting there. But at the same time, this technology, while disrupting, is also opening up massive possibilities. And that is what I think of creativity. My definition of creativity is to look at possibilities. And yet, why is it that creativity is such a difficult thing? Because creativity calls for people to keep an open mind. And where do you think we'll go to prepare for the uncertain future? Education. We think education is going to prepare us for this uncertain future. Is it going to, is my question. Sadly, the answer is no. In the next 30 years or 25 years, there'll be more people coming out of universities than in the entire history of mankind. And I can tell you for sure, most of them will not be ready to make a contribution in any meaningful way. Because the jobs that you need today, that we needed some years ago with O-levels, I got an O-level pass. A-levels needs degrees, needs masters, needs PhDs. Look at the MBAs. The MBAs have become a joke. And yet, we still rely on this education system to provide people fuel for the future. But the IBM execs are saying creativity. Sadly, schools kill creativity. Because creativity, open mind. Do schools allow you to keep an open mind? In fact, I would go even before schools, childhood. Because the two things that you need to be creative and open is to overcome fear and shame. And yet, what do you tell children? Constantly frighten them. And worship. God is looking at you. The devil will come. The black crow will eat you if you don't eat your food. So children are stuffed things into, they are frightened, terrified of anything. They're even terrified to let them run. Don't run, you will fall. So from childhood, they are starting to kill their enthusiasm to explore, to find out. And shame. Shame of failure will come to later. Child walks in 3 years old, naked as a newborn baby. The guests are having tea, and the mothers and the fathers say, "Chee, go and put on a pair of shorts." So you see, you start becoming ashamed of yourself, fear. Schools take it to another level. They do not encourage questioning. And it's a terrible environment. Take the schools in Sri Lanka today. What do? Take these young children at the age, from the time they are in grade 2 or 3, we prepare them for this terrible thing called the Shishatva, the scholarship. You have that in India, Professor, scholarships. Where you do well, you go to a good school. And that's how our children are killed, the spirit of growing up freely. Now, I have a little boy, not my own son, boy who's in my sphere of influence. Amazing fellow, 5 years old. He's so creative. When they asked him to send the application to the school, he wanted to attach a picture of himself that he drew, right? But, the school, they thrashed him. Of course, you have to send a picture for the file. But he is an inventor. All he wants to do is to build things. And he will build kites. 5 years old. In fact, today I sent a picture of a kite. And he's fascinated by anything that flies, that takes off, jets. Now he wants to build a sky lantern. And the amazing thing is he doesn't want to buy it. He wants to build it. And can you imagine building a kite? It's a fine art. He's learning physics. And today he's made a kite, he sent the frame, and he's asking me in Sinhalese, make a ude either. Will it go up? That's his challenge, to make this damn kite fly. And he's learning the balance and all that. Now he goes to school this year. Dictation. Spell grandmother, grandfather, father, all wrong. He's writing some gibberish. Now the mother is thrashing him at home. Now, why should he learn to write grandfather when he's 5 years old? There's no need to learn that. So, this is so sad. And this is why we are struggling to produce people who can, nourish our society and business. So, what are we doing today in our workplaces? Now, in our workplaces, sadly, again, we find the same thing. I was told you about creativity and innovation. Obviously, innovation is about taking an idea. So we are lacking ideas, we are lacking new ways of doing things. Innovation is obviously to take it forward. But even in our companies, what is the thing that drives business? Success only. Failure is frowned upon. Again, we come back to education system. You cannot fail. When you fail an exam, you're looked down upon. And we never give a prize for students who tried best. So they drop out. Same at work. Always an award is given for the best performing salesman. Never do they give a prize for the best project that failed. Because they're very worried about the investments they're making, short-term return on earnings, not long-term value creation. So the companies are so backward. And combination of not seeing possibilities, not seeing the disruption, and not keeping your mind open to letting people fail and learn quickly, you're killing creativity, innovation, and all that in business. So that's the challenge we face in our companies today. And creativity is not only about making new products. It's about even telling a story. Now, Niruban is there. He's our head of communication. Interesting fellow. He was at Ernst & Young doing accountancy for 8 years. Decided to change his career. In fact, I had lots of interesting discussion about typography with him, and I'll talk about some of that. Communication. Now, we are trying very hard. How do we communicate our stories? We have had great success, and this is not the forum to talk about it, in banking, in finance, and all that. Our sales guys can't go and tell a story because they just are struggling. And that's why, for me, storytelling is important. And that's my interest in typography and design and all of that. Because that's the essence of what we are trying to do. In everything we do, storytelling. And in fact, people talk about Steve Jobs, and they say what a great inventor he is. There's a big debate whether he actually invented anything. Because, the graphical user interface, the MP3, they were all invented by other people. But he had one clear thing in his mind. He wanted to create fantastic user experience. And that came, strangely, not from his studies at whatever Harvard or wherever he went to, Stanford, but it came from going to your class, calligraphy. And also, he went to India and took a lot of LSD and smoked dope. That opened his mind to all kinds of possibilities with color. And no, I'm not for a moment suggesting that you go and try LSD. That's a different matter. But calligraphy and his time in India, maybe looking at the Indian culture and all of that, mysticism, openness, not in current Indian society, like Sri Lanka, very backward. But that's what Steve Jobs' secret is. So whom does he hire in his company? Okay, there are scientists and technologists, but he hires Sir Jonathan Ives, design, MBE for design. He brings him. Then he hires Angela Ahrens from Burberry, head of design Burberry, apparel, fashion. These are the people he brings, because he understands I can put together other people's technologies and create a unique user experience that is driving consumption. So that's your job, isn't it? Can I create exciting user interfaces? Can it tell a story? And that brings me to an interesting quote that I found. I'm sure you must have heard about this gentleman called Cyrus Highsmith. Have you all heard about him? Cyrus Highsmith. Worth reading, interesting. Now, there's an article called, that I was reading up, called Effect of User Experience and Conversions in Typography. And very interesting quote. He says, typography is the detail and the presentation of a story. That's amazing, isn't it? The details and presentation of a story. It represents the voice of an atmosphere or a historical setting of some kind. Then, in a terrible understatement, he says, it can do a lot of things. So, this is why Niruban and I struggle to find the right lettering. What can we do with our web? Where do we put the star? Where do you put? And my guys must be thinking in office, we're a technology company. What the hell are you wasting so much time? Even if you do a Christmas card, it takes so many iterations, because we want to be very clear that we are telling a story, an atmosphere. We are creating something through this typography and style and design. We are telling something about ourselves. In fact, the person who wrote the article goes a step further and says, typography is body language. It's the first impression that you create with all the work that you're doing. So, I thought this was quite fascinating. But what I found even more fascinating and connected to our topic, this whole thing about creativity and openness, and this is very interesting because I see the Venerable Monk here. Very interesting that the way he teaches, Cyrus Highsmith, the way he teaches typography, he says, I want to teach typography from the point of view of of type designer who's focused on not the letters, he doesn't say that, who's focused on white shapes and white spaces. Now that brings me back to creativity. Now he's looking at a space that's in between the letters and the curves and all that. In fact, his book is called The Space Inside a Paragraph. Now he is looking at it very differently. He's not so concerned about the curves of the serif and the sans serif and all that. He's looking at the spaces. And he says, if you train yourself, it doesn't come naturally. If you train yourself to see and think about white space in the context of a paragraph and how all those different kinds of spaces relate to each other, you're off to a good start. You see the big picture, you have the starting point. Now, for me, I'm using the question of space as a metaphor. Are we keeping enough space in our mind? I would like to allude to the monk and Buddhism and Hinduism. Are we creating space, or are we clouding ourselves with all kinds of negativity and all of that comes from our parents, from our schools, from our bosses, from society, from politicians? Are we keeping? And this is a culture that was way before the Western culture and development took place, civilization. And yet we are so backward today. Look at our industries, look at our banks, they're so backward. Our entire system is so backward. We are not investing in people to create open mind and open spaces. Education. What little goes into creating a different type of education in this country. We say in this country, give foremost place to Buddhism. It only means making statues and all that. not what the Buddhism taught us. Keep your mind open, keep your mind free. That is the space for creativity. And let go. Don't hold on to tanna, as we say, one of the Four Noble Truths. We don't teach our children that. We teach them some other utterly reactionary form of Buddhism and other religions. So this is an opportunity for us to go and make a change. But I ask you one last question. What is all this, typography, storytelling and all that, and business and technology, if it is not addressing some bigger question of humanity? That's why I was very interested to read about this gentleman, Peter Diamandis, who is a MIT aeronautic engineer and an MD from Harvard and all of that. He's got this thing called the X project, which I think gives money to $100 million for those who are going to, be involved in private space exploration and all that. But now he's spending his time with Ray Kurzweil, the Google engineering man, to harness technologies to make an impact on mankind. And what they're doing today is to create a big prize to start a global platform to educate people. Because today there are 10 billion people who are illiterate. And please, Sri Lanka, don't get carried away thinking that we are 96% literate. That's all nonsense. There's no literacy there. We just know how to write a few letters, and they call that literacy. So that's not literacy of today's world. They want to create a platform. Out of a billion people, are illiterate. 100 million of these children no access to schools. So they're using technology to try and see whether they can educate these children in some basic subjects over 2 to 3 year period, accessible on mobile and devices. So that's where your work also comes in. Are we being in a space that can create something that can have a greater impact on mankind? And I'm very pleased that there is this kind of work that's going on. And I'm hoping that some of you, while we struggle with creativity and all that, also look at your own business or your own trade and see whether you yourself might get disrupted. Because I'm thinking, and I was chatting with Niruban, he was telling me, today, if it is all about spacers and thickness and thinness of lines, can't algorithms do this? And I'm having an interesting discussion with Shan, who is going to speak to you later about fonts, about singular fonts, and the fabulous work he has done, whether algorithms will create some of the thousands of possibilities of fonts that can, address this whole question of space and clarity and pixels and technology and all of that. Interesting thought. But the thing is, again, if that is disrupting, where do you go? And again, I'm so glad I had a chat with Shan. He's now talking about using language and typography and what he has learned to create a platform to do proofreading. Correct, Shan? I don't want to take anything away from your speech. You're going to talk about that later? Okay. So proofreading. So he's now gone somewhere else. And he's also got some other interesting apps. I don't want to steal his thunder. So you've got to constantly be aware of what will disrupt you. And how are you going to, make the next leap? In fact, I'm wondering whether it's even worth a lot of the work that we do around English fonts. Because there's so much going on and so much money that goes in. I'm wondering whether among this crowd here, or with the work that you are doing, whether we will create a gold standard, or there's no such thing, it's always dynamic, some exciting standard for singular fonts. So that's what I want to share with you today. I hope it was of some use to you. And I thought I'll spend the next 15 minutes, do you have, Professor, on questions and answers. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.